What happens in the sky affects life down here on Earth. The celestial compass shows you how and guides your way with astrology you can use from professional astrologer Kathy Beal. Every episode features her light-hearted, practical forecasts and navigational tips, blended with humor, optimism, and a love of patterns, symbolism, and pop culture references. Kathy translates technicalities into concepts that apply to real life. You'll learn how the current moment ties to where we've been, from the recent past to cycles that last happened years ago, and get a look at where we're heading. And much more, from special topics to special guests. The Celestial Compass, enlightening, entertaining, and empowering. Here's your host, Kathy Beal.
Greetings, Earthlings. Welcome to Celestial Compass. I'm Kathy Beal of EmpowermentUnlimited.net, and we're doing things differently in today's episode. It is rescheduled from one that was thwarted by technology, but the topic is the same, and we're talking about the power of stillness, which is something that not many of us are experiencing these days. And I have with us a long time friend of mine, Nancy Lynch. We've known each other for decades, who has been starting the day sitting at the 8th tee of the golf course in her neighborhood. And we're going to talk about the really interesting things that have spiraled out from that, much more than you might think. So welcome, Nancy. Good to see you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
I'm glad we're doing this again. So I'd like to put things in a little bit of context before we talk about your morning ritual. I have always known you to be an autodidact, someone who loves to learn, and you teach yourself all kinds of things. And one topic of particular interest to you has been religion from your teens. And I see it kind of as like immersive study. You're not someone who has simply read books. So can you talk a little bit about how you decided that you'd start experiencing other religions besides the one your parents took you to?
Yeah. Well, part of it is that I have a very eclectic family. And so we have a lot of different religions that everybody separated and went their own way. So I cannot say I study religions, but I like to get the feel for them. So I can't claim to know that much about the actual rituals, but I have always been just interested in what makes people click, and what makes them tick. My dad was probably more Jewish than he was anything, but he was in the Presbyterian church for a long time. I have following brothers. I have a brother who went off and became a Catholic, who's the most Catholic person I've ever known. And I ended up in the Episcopal church, partly because it was very close to where I lived. And my brothers had gone to an Episcopal boarding school. So, and my mother was pretty much agnostic. So I've just had a lot of exposure to different things, and we never had any kind of family rituals to fall back on.
But you have visited other churches, though. At one point, weren't you hanging out in the Southern Baptist Church?
No, I really like to understand people who have a different viewpoint from mine. And so I guess it was in 2012, I decided to go to an extremely conservative Baptist church. And I have to say, it was an absolutely wonderful experience, much to my surprise. I found that there was no hypocrisy. There was I just found it to be one of the sweetest places. And, I'm 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 in favor of having, um, I'm pro-choice, and they were not. But what I loved about it was that this church then developed its own um, clinic and help for young mothers. And so they were walking the walk and talking the talk. And I really have a great appreciation for that. And um, I just found it to be a wonderful experience all the way around. And so in recent years, I had a dear friend of ours die, and it just kind of left me floating around. And I decided I just kind of needed to do something different for a while. So I I couldn't settle on anything. I thought, well, I'll just go to a completely different church or a completely different religion and just get immersed a little bit. And but that didn't seem right. And the only thing that I really found myself yearning to do was to go up at the top of the hill. There's a it's where the eighth tee is for the Hancock Golf Course, which is the oldest golf course west of the Mississippi. Um, and Just sit there and watch the sunrise. It's one of the what I refer to as a thin place. It's kind of where all sorts of magic in my family has always happened. It's been where we've always watched the stars from there. We've always watched the any kind of event. We would kind of end up going there, and it just had kind of a magic of its own. So I decided to go there and take a chair out of my trunk and just sit there and watch the sunrise. And
Can we have the first photo, Chris? This is a photo of the chair that Nancy hauls across the street. While we're getting that, at this time, you were also in Torah study. Is that correct? And then at
yeah,
same time, you decided you were going to dedicate a day of the week to
yeah.
religion. Can you
Um,
talk about that?
because my dad, um, really, he died when I was about 19. And uh, I found that he had studied a lot of Jewish theologians. And so I've always been intrigued by that. And I ended up having a friend who um, got me into going to Torah study on Saturdays. So that's my only involvement over at the synagogue. And but it's really a very sweet group of friends now. And uh, so one of the things that I decided, since I couldn't decide on a particular religion to study or kind of use as a backdrop for sitting out there on at the eighth tee, I decided to pick a bunch of books from the different religions and just read one of them for each day. So Mondays was Buddhism, and Tuesdays was Taoism, and Wednesdays was another. And so every day of the week had a different religion and a different set of readings that I would go to. And like I said, it was nothing very serious, but it would be, 20 or 30 minutes of just listening to something. And I tried um, to stick with things that were more the mystical aspects of the religions.
Mm-hmm.
And what I found was that they all kind of mesh together, because when you are looking just at the mystical aspects of these religions, they're very, very, very similar. And some days I wouldn't even be aware which religion I was listening to because the message was so similar.
Mm-hmm. So I want you to think back to when you first started walking across the street. Do you remember how long it was before somebody noticed you were sitting there? Was it days or?
No, it was immediate, and particularly dog walkers, because as you can see, there's a pathway there. It used to be for the golf carts, but they banned those at the golf course. So now it's just a, a, a little sidewalk where a lot of people walk their animals. And I find that the dog walkers are always extremely friendly. And so, yeah, those were probably the first people that I started, uh, who started interacting with me. Later, the golfers started interacting with me. And definitely, probably the first group who interacted with me were the maintenance guys at the golf course. And one in particular would come by every day and just chat for 5 or 10 minutes. And he became one of my very, very closest friends and kind of one of my God buddies.
Can we have the next picture, please, Chris? Um, so at some point, besides people walking by and noticing and saying things, people started joining you, right?
Yeah, I threw a couple of more chairs in my trunk. And so um, initially, I started just setting out chairs and, like an extra chair. And then that I kind of thought, yeah, people might be a little, I don't know, that didn't quite seem right. So as I made friends, particularly one set of friends, just every time they come by, I leave the trunk open and they just go grab their chair and pull it out there and sit with me. And it's just wonderful. And we have a long, it's like having your friends in the neighborhood come by and have coffee with you, you know.
Um, so there are people who you've learned about other religions from some of the people who've joined you, right?
Yeah, yeah. One of them, one of the most, well, there was just so much synchronicity going on around there. And one day I was sitting there and just kind of staring off into space, and uh, a young woman's head just kind of popped in front of me. And she's just this absolutely stunningly gorgeous Indian woman. And it just happened to be Hindu day. And so I was, I was, so I was kind of like, ooh, this is cool. Um, so she said, would you mind if I sat here and watched the sunrise with you? And I thought, yeah, that'd be so great. So she just plopped down on the ground, not like 3 feet away. I mean, she plopped down right next to me. I could have pet her like a little puppy. Um, and it was just so cute. And so we exchanged pleasantries, and they said, well, um, so by any chance are you Hindu? And she said, why, yes, I am. And so I reached into the pocket of the chair and pulled out a copy of the Bhagavad Gita, and it's one by Eknath Ishwaran. And I handed it to her. So she was really surprised,
Yeah.
needless to say. But she has ended up, she walked around the park every morning, almost every morning with an older gentleman, probably my age. They were walking buddies, and so they're two of the people who I've become closest to. And so um, she's really become a very, very close friend, and that's been a wonderful, wonderful relationship.
And you've met a musician also?
Oh, I've met lots of musicians, and uh, one of them on Islam Day is my husband and I were out there, and all of a sudden this guy walks up, and on that day I usually listen to a book on it's Karen Armstrong's book on Islam, just for historical perspective, but also I listen to Rumi. And um, Mohammed Farouzi, who is a musician with the Tosh, which is a well-known band uh, in Austin, he just walked up and started reciting some poetry in Farsi, just out of the blue. And it turns out that he has been taking pictures of the sunrise at that exact spot for about 5 years. And of course, so, and it was just quite magical. And he's become a really good friend too. And then, other times I had a really fabulous musician come by and say, I'm a teacher and I see you here every morning, and I'm having a concert. I'm a music teacher, but I am a professional guitarist, and this is one of my concerts. So it just and it was this absolutely wonderful performance that my husband and I went to. So it's opened up a lot of different avenues for just meeting people.
Chris, could we have the next photo, please? Didn't you also end up meeting someone that you hired to play at your husband's birthday party?
Well, that was actually Mohammed Farouzi. He was uh, uh, the person I was telling you about with Atash, and yeah, he was, and he will recite things that are pretty serious sometimes. And so I asked him one time. I said, "Well, so expecting him to have a roomy-ish response," and I said, "So how do you kind of stay centered? Um, what kind of makes you feel good?" And he said, "Westerns." I said, "What?" And he said, "Yeah, John Wayne." And so anyway, he's just quite a character. So it's a good way to start the morning.
Could we have the next photo, Chris? And you don't always go out alone, right?
Well, I usually do, but if friends are in town, then I take them with me. And David sometimes goes, and I have a granddaughter, and if she spends the night with us, she comes also. So it's usually it's strange. This particular spot is usually extremely safe from the golf balls. This morning, there were two that came within like 20 feet of me. So I don't know if Memorial Day is the day of really bad golfers. But and, and and the golfers are of all shapes and sizes, and that has been so much fun to watch because there's also lots of students who are coming there to play. It's a city golf course, and so some of the high schoolers come and play. Some of the UT players come, and they're really good. Um, but there's the ones that have the remote driven golf carts uh, for their golf clubs. Um, and this morning there was a guy out there playing barefoot. Um, yeah,
Well, it is
and
hot in Texas.
and then my favorites are the ones who are the one club golfers. They just walk around with one club. So they'll bring around a 5 iron or a 7 iron, and they just every ball they hit just with that one golf club. So
So you
pretty
get,
fun.
all right, you have nature, you get to watch the sky, you're learning, you're meeting people, you've got uncommon people watching, you're developing friendships. Do you go out there on holidays? You have, right?
Yeah, we almost always do, and if we do, we usually try to bring something for the guys who work out there. So we might bring them tacos or pie or something like that. um, I can't make too much of a production out of it, so it's kind of a handoff at that point.
Mhm.
But
You've brought warm pie on Thanksgiving or something, right?
yeah, yeah, that was a hit, definitely. But do not get tacos and forget the hot sauce. All I can say.
Okay, yeah, complain,
So I didn't
complain.
make that mistake again. But
And one time you were just sitting there and a complete stranger came up and knew who you were with a gift.
was this the picture you're talking
Yep.
about?
Yep.
Okay, well, there was a man who just, I hadn't really seen him before, and he walked up and he said, "Hi, I don't mean to be presumptuous, but I do art in the park, and I see you here every morning, and I did an oil painting of this exact spot." Uh, uh, as part of my art in the park, and I was wondering if you'd like it. And so it's hanging on my wall now. And it was just a very sweet, sweet gesture.
So you're becoming notorious.
Well, I don't know, within a very small group of people, you happen to be out at, sunrise. But yeah, yeah, definitely getting a reputation.
My favorite story that you've told me about this involved Buddhist chanting.
Yeah, this is probably my favorite too.
All right.
So I found some really low chanting on Pandora, and it was a really quiet morning, and so nobody was out, and so I was kind of, in the groove. I was not looking around. I was actually trying to kind of meditate to this very low frequency chanting. And so it started up, and then it kind of stopped for a minute, for just a short minute, and then it started up again. And but it just kind of, it held the same note for the longest time, and I thought, this is a little weird. So finally I looked up and realized that what I had been listening to for the for the second part of that was actually the leaf blower on the nearby green. And
Which you hate. You
I
hate leaf blowers.
hate leaf blowers. There's very few things that I would ever say I hate, but leaf blowers is one of them. So I started laughing so hard that I almost fell out of my chair. So yeah, I think um, the universe was trying to send me a message.
Hmm.
So
That's the most dramatic
yeah,
story you told me. Can you think of anything that comes anywhere near that? That's pretty much it, right?
no, but there's just so much magic out there. I mean, and I am a specialist now at the art of golf course maintenance. I now know all the rules on how to, uh, you know, which tractors you use for the green and which ones you use for the joint, the out area around that. Um, when you change the flags, there's an order of the flags, and they rotate those around. And my favorite aspect of golf course maintenance is when they move the hole for the different uh, uh, um, tees. So when in order to move the hole, there's kind of a post digger type mechanism that they go down and they dig a new hole. And this is to make it more interesting, but also to keep it from getting worn out, getting the grass wearing out. So they push it down and they pull out a plug of dirt that's kind of like the size of a bean can. Um, and then they take the cup and put it in that one. And then they take that plug and put it where the old hole was. And then they just tap that down. And so I have decided that as part of my um, uh, death plans in the future, that somehow somehow I'm going to sneak some of my ashes into one of those holes. So
Only you.
I'm pretty sure it's illegal, but we'll figure out a way.
Okay. Chris, could we have another photo, please? Uh, well, all right. It seems to me there's something symbolic in watching the holes being moved, but I'll leave it to you to think that through. You go out there when it's raining, even, right?
Yeah, that's actually my favorite time. I have this wonderful kind of heavier uh, grade poncho that I take out there that's big enough to cover me and the chairs. So as long as it's not raining too hard, I can sneak out there and put that on and then just listen to it, listen to the raindrops on that. And it just, it's one of my all time favorite times.
Is that
So,
is that sort of, are you lulled into, like, do you sleep? I mean, you
sometimes I have fallen asleep, I have to admit, but really, um, there's so much to see and to hear that actually usually I'm pretty attentive. Um, and it's just, I'm not naturally a nature person. That's kind of not been what I've been all my life. So it's been a really nice experience just to sit there and watch stuff. I love, one of my favorite things is just to, if we get a really big soaker out there, the next day or so, there'll be mushrooms that pop up. Well, all of a sudden, I've gotten really fascinated with mushrooms. you know, it's very confusing to the guys who use white balls out there because all the mushrooms look like they're golf balls, so they have a hard time finding it. But no, just how quickly they pop up, it's just fascinating to me.
With this, we're going to take a brief break. Hang in, everybody. There's actually more to talk about. See you in a couple of minutes.
Om Times TV.
Want help with your own celestial compass? Visit my site, empowermentunlimited.net, for Astro Insight forecasts for each week, month, and new and full moon. Want to explore the personal impact? Make a decision? Understand another person? It is possible. Click the Services tab to book a personal session with me. That address again? empowermentunlimited.net.
Imagine becoming a super influencer. Reinvent yourself, invest in your brand, and then manifest your success with a robust spheric approach. Om Times Media and Broadcasting offers a unique and multifaceted way to become the spiritual and conscious influencer you deserve to be by putting your message across our powerful platform with its proven record of integrity and excellence. Through our produced shows, Om Times offers the opportunity to become a social media TV personality, a radio show host, an Om Times magazine columnist, and a syndicated podcaster, all in one shot. By live streaming your show on Om Times TV and broadcasting it across the extensive Om Times radio and TV networks, you become more than a host. You become an ambassador and a force for positive change. Om Times. Open yourself to the possibilities.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour. If we could find a way to get inside each other's minds. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes. Well, before you abuse, criticize, and accuse, walk a mile in my shoes.
Welcome back to Celestial Compass. We're talking today with my longtime friend, Nancy Lynch, a ordinary person who's not so ordinary, who spends the day starts the day sitting at the 8th tee of the golf course in her neighborhood in Austin, Texas. And we've been talking about how you have split the week up into dedicating one day to different religions and the people that you've been meeting. I am curious to hear about how your experience of doing this has evolved. I know that when you said when you first went out, you had a certain goal. Do you have a different or an expanded goal now, or is it simply now something that you do?
Well, unfortunately, I've had some interruptions in recent months, so it's gotten a little bit off. I I I think that one of the things that I saw that was so important was that when you get into a routine, um, people come to expect you to have that routine. And I came to expect them to have a certain routine. And it was a very comforting way to start the day. It was kind of like, there's a certain amount of trust in a way
Mhm.
that life is going to go on and these things are going to be part of your life predictably. And, I think that. Um, I think that's one of the things that I came to appreciate was the need to develop rituals and routines that make life predictable for yourself and also for other people. Um, and there's just a level of trust that you get so that even very shy people will come up and talk to you or find a reason to talk to you if you've seen them and waved to them every day for the last year. you know um, I think that um, I just am trying to really appreciate the beauty of it all. um, the golf course, and I love, if you sit in the same spot, you see how the sun moves around, you know. Um, and so in the summer months, it's to my far left, and in the winter months, it's directly in front of me. And so you get a sense of seasons, even though Austin doesn't have very good and distinct seasons because it's pretty mild almost always. Um, so I just like the sense of a passing of time, and I love clouds. I've always loved clouds. Um, I love seeing weather happening to other people, so that you can see it. I grew up out in Midland, out in West Texas, and I always loved watching the clouds and the weather. So I think that that's probably one of my favorite things is just watching it. The sunrises sometimes are so breathtakingly gorgeous that you cannot help but be in awe. And I
Speaking
think,
of which, oh, just one second. Chris, could we have the next photo, please? All right, I'm sorry.
and I don't, just ended up snapping these pictures. Now, this one is not one of mine. This one was a very sentimental moment for me. Um, my friend Tony, who was one of the workmen there at the golf course, um, uh, I had gone on vacation. Actually, I had gone to see you, Kathy Beal, in Houston. And when
Mhm.
I came back that Monday, Tony drove up to me, and insofar as one can screech to a halt in a golf cart, he did, and he said, "You missed one of the most beautiful sunrises, and I just couldn't stand that you'd miss it. So I took a picture of it, and so this was it." And for me, it just represents community. I mean, that was just a very sentimental moment that he would want to share that with me. And I think that our highest calling in this world is to create community, and shared awe and shared symbolism. Those are just critical to um, creating a community that really is bound to each other.
Chris, can we have the next photo, please? So would you say that this has had an impact on how you feel about life? Like, are you calmer, more grounded? Are your days starting out differently from before you
Yeah,
started this?
definitely. It is a way to ground myself. It takes me out of politics. It takes me out of pressures of work. It takes me out of just worrying. You know, I mean, there's something so comforting that big old star 90 million miles away is is a critical element to our continued existence, and it keeps coming up every day,
Yeah,
and
I
so
was
it's
thinking that, like,
very.
no matter what's going on out in the world, you sit there and you go, "Oh, the sun is still here."
Yeah, and people will come by and I'll be looking that direction and it'll be all cloudy and they'll say, well, kind of hard to get the sunrise. I said, well, I'm pretty sure it's still over there. So so I do it whether I can see it or not. But it's just, these are pretty unsettling times right now, and uh, relying on nature to ground you is a really good thing to do, I think.
Mhm, mhm. And you've also taken this a little further, right? You made your first stab at writing a
Yes.
play. Chris, can you put the next picture up while she tells us about that? Thank you.
Yeah. There is a small theater here called Hyde Park Theater, and one of their it must be a fundraiser, but anyway, in the month of uh, January 15th to February 15th, they have what's called Frontera Fest. And you don't have to be any good. This is not judged in order to get into it, but they allow 80 plays um, into the competition, and first come, first serve, and it's to be a 25-minute play. And so I wrote a play about these experiences, and a lot of my comments today are the same ones that I've made in the play. But because it's a neighborhood venue, I was able to get about a third of the 75 people in the audience to be my buddies. So they laughed a little bit too hard, and that ate up some of my time. So I ran over, so I couldn't even compete for best of show because I went over time. But that was a good reason to do it, because it was really very well received by my buddies who were plants to a certain extent. But it was a really good experience. I had always wanted to write a play, but I had never had any vehicle for doing that. So when I noticed this, I took a shot at it.
Chris, can we have the next photo? And did this give you the opportunity to get a little distance from the experience and think about it from a like a broader, what does this mean in my life perspective? Oh, I like that one.
Well, I did write something about what my takeaways were, um, and they're predictable based on what I've been telling you. But um, there were several takeaways, and one was, in all of these religions and in everything that I was experiencing, we have to honor nature and have that be a part of our lives, and that it's really critical to be kind and to be gentle in this world and to create community. And also, one of the things that I really thought about a lot was whether I'm all in on the things that I'm doing in my life.
Hmm.
Whether I'm really treating it with enthusiasm, because every year I make a list of different things to try. And part of that is just to use different parts of my brain and to expose myself to different things. But there are some things that I'm really dedicated to, and I really was starting to ask myself if I was really all in on those. Um, am I all in on taking care of a particular friend? Am I all in on committing to whatever work I'm doing or whatever political issue that I'm on? And it's the Jewish tradition of saying that it's not that you have to complete the task, but neither can you walk away from it. And so the message to myself that I took away from all of this was to figure out what I should be doing and do it with enthusiasm, and don't worry about the outcome. Just do what you're supposed to do.
Hmm.
And that really has been what's sunk in the most. That was completely different from the perspective that I'd had before.
Chris, can we have the next photo, please? It seemed to me too that you said something to me once about if you want to go on an adventure, stay
Yeah,
still or something. What?
yeah. Just try sitting still, because we go go go, and this was this really opened my eyes to all that I was missing by going and going and going. You know, um, this was probably one of the most poignant adventures I've ever been on in my life. Um, and it just has had a certain magic to it that I don't know if I can ever recreate if I wanted to. I hope that it continues on its own, but it's just been a wonderful experience for me.
Have you noticed any impact on your granddaughter? I mean, I know she does all kinds of little things with you. You always have special things you're doing with her.
Yeah. Not really. She's still at this age where everything is within, a 10-foot range. But I what I am happy about is having written the play. And that was more for my child and for my grandchild, and um, because it's hard. It really is kind of my heart and soul that I put into that, and it's hard to remember these people. Um, it's hard to remember the words that they used, and so I'm glad to have something to pass on to them, even if it's just a little play.
Well, don't you imagine that there might be an extended life for this play?
Maybe, I don't know. you know, it's I have no idea. I do know that every year I do plan on writing one of these 25-minute plays.
Aha.
Um, yeah. So in that sense, yes. I'm not sure that this will be the topic. Um, but it was just such a wonderful experience, and I got to meet an entirely new group of people who were involved in theater, which I've never been into. I know you have forever, so but I got a little taste of your world, and but it had always been something I'd wanted to do, and that was strange because I'd never been an actor. I'd never done any playwriting or anything. It's just something I thought I would enjoy. So, um, but I think that you can make some pretty significant points within 25 minutes. Um, so, so
Chris, can we have the next photo, please? There are a bunch of them. These were photos that you used in your play too, right?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's
Yeah.
an interesting one.
Yep.
So, like I said, at the very beginning, I have known you to always be exploring something, learning this, learning that, working ideas out. And you dedicate every year to a particular country, right? You've been
Yeah.
hosting a salon for a number of years where people read about a country and watch films and literature.
Yeah. I am not a very well educated person. Um, I'm a lawyer. So in a lot of ways, I've had at least that kind of education, but I did not have a good grounding, and particularly not in history. So of course, I married a history buff who knows everything about everything. And when the pandemic came, particularly, um, I just had the idea that we ought to get our friends together and we'll study one country for the whole year, and we'll read one book every month about that country, and or having to do with that country. Could be literature, could be art, could be anything. And then we would watch 24 movies. You get to know a lot about a country if you've watched 24 movies and read 12 books about it. So it was kind of our substitute for traveling during the pandemic. And we've got this little group of about 10 people, sometimes 15, that gets together and every other week, and we talk about these what we've read and what we've watched. And so now we've been doing it for about 10 years, really. And that has been wonderful. And we are never at a loss for things to talk about. I set a timer, and people can talk about their health for 5 minutes for the entire group. And then we have to change the topic, and we don't talk politics. We just, we stick with trying to learn things about these different countries. And it's been absolutely wonderful. It's probably one of my favorite things that we do.
Besides sitting outside
Yeah,
at this tea.
yeah.
Okay. All right. So
But it also gave my husband an outlet because he loves history and loves to teach it. So it gave him an opportunity to shine too.
this is a family affair. Now, you have long, long, long ago, kind of summing all this up, you developed a formula for living that has 3 parts. Would you mind sharing that? I don't think this is going to surprise anybody.
Well, I think I must have been in my 20s, and I was kind of looking for some some easy access words to live by. And so the 3 rules that I came up with, and I've never improved on them, were don't be a jerk, don't be a dope, and believe in miracles. And just about everything falls into those categories, and particularly the one about don't be a dope. Oh my gosh, so many things fall into that category. But they're my go-tos when I'm trying to figure out whether I'm doing the right thing. And it's for probably 50 years now. I've been very satisfied with it.
I would say don't be a dope speaks to a lot of things we have both encountered in our legal career.
Yes.
Very, very much so. And the believe in miracles, your being at the tea has been a constant masterclass in that, it sounds like.
Yeah, it has. It definitely has.
So, you have parting words of wisdom for anyone?
Yeah. Don't be a dope. Don't be a jerk. And believe in miracles. No. I just think kindness is the whole ball of wax, you know. Uh, it it's the whole thing. There's nothing more.
Okay. Well, can we have one more photo, Chris? See what the final one is. We had a whole bunch queued up, but let's see. Do you remember when you see these? Do you remember when you took it?
Sometimes I do. Um, you know, they're like I said, I'm not a photographer. These were just snapshots. But some of them, you know, I got a better camera on my phone, and so they got better and better. And I don't know how to filter. I don't know how to do any of that. Um,
Oh,
so
Chris, can we have the last photo? There we go.
there I am in all my glory.
Sitting there. So there's a dog walker in the picture.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So lots of dogs, lots of dogs. And I try to write down their names and the names of the people as they go by. I'll try to send myself a text so that I'll try to remember their names.
Well, I really appreciate you talking with us about all of this. I know I warned people this was going to be a kind of different show, and definitely because we had the technical troubles last time.
Yeah.
But it does speak to community building, which is part of Pluto in Aquarius, and it speaks to an individual connection to nature and to spiritual wisdom, which is all the big bodies moving into the beginning of Aries. Neptune's been there since the end of March, and Saturn moved into Aries right before we started recording this. So this is something everybody has the power to tap into. It's as crazy as the outside world is, it is possible to have points of stillness within yourself, and you are living proof of that.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. And one final thing, haven't you heard from people who have gone to other parts of the country and let you know when they've been watching the sunrise?
Oh yeah, yeah. I have friends who, when they go on vacations or when they've moved, they'll take pictures of the same sunrise and send them to me in the mornings. So we'll share morning sunrises in the early morning. So that's really sweet too.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I appreciate it again. And everyone, Nancy's just a private individual doing this. She doesn't have a website. If you're floating around Austin, you might see her play crop up somewhere, or you might not. Uh, you might see Nancy walking down the street, and you'll go, "Oh, I think I saw you."
Yeah,
Again, we've
really.
been friends for a really long time. So, and everyone, you can find my forecasts at empowermentunlimited.net and at my YouTube channel, Professional Aquarian, and at Om Times. The monthly and the new moon and full moon forecasts are at Om Times. The other two places also have my weekly forecasts. And I have a Patreon, patreon.com/Kathy Beal. And I'm giving a talk through Zoom because I'm not flying as long as Newark Airport is a mess. I'm giving a talk for the Houston Astrological Society on June 1st on Saturn and Neptune in Aries throughout history, the trends that have been going on. So if you go to my website, empowermentunlimited.net, there's a big yellow banner near the top. Click on that, and it'll take you to information about that. So thanks again very, very much, Nancy. I really appreciate you doing this.
Thank you so much, Kathy.
All right. We're going to cut out early. Bye, everyone. Be safe.